Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here with an interview. We haven't done one of these in a while, actually, and I think that is certainly a shame. So I think this would be an ideal opportunity to get back on that particular boat. And I can introduce to you a man behind an indie developer who is coming up with a game that's coming out very, very soon indeed. In fact, it's coming out on the 20th of July on Xbox Live Arcade. The name of the game is Bastion. The name of the developer is Supergiant, and the name of the man is Greg Kasabin. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So, who are you and what are you doing here? Explain your role in the company.
Yeah, well, my title is creative director, but in terms of what I actually did on the project, since that title sounds a bit meaningless,
it's a bit nebulous.
Yeah, exactly. I come up with the vision. It's like,
oh, God.
We all have to, yeah. We're a small team of 7 people, so everyone has to wear multiple hats. And in my case, I'm responsible for the story and writing in Bastion, and then I also did roughly half of the level design in the game, together with Amir Rao, who was served as lead designer and is a studio co-founder and studio director. So that's what I do and did on Bastion. And prior to that, I worked at a couple of larger publishers at EA on the Command & Conquer franchise and at 2K Games for about a year, and then further back than that, I was in the gaming press for quite a while, where I worked at GameSpot most notably, and was editor-in-chief there before I took the plunge into game development at the beginning of 2007.
Yeah, it's quite the interesting CV that you've got there. We're talking about the Command & Conquer franchise. You actually worked, if I recall, on CNC 3, as well as the expansion, and you were involved in Red Alert 3 and Uprising, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that's that is you got 3 out of 4 right. I didn't actually work on Kane's Wrath, the CNC 3 expansion, but
in that
did
case,
work
we're going
on.
to have to edit the Giant Bomb wiki.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
right,
indeed.
Yeah, go for it.
Damn you, Giant Bomb! They're so rarely incorrect.
Yeah, it's true. Their wiki stuff is really great.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I had some like peripheral involvement with it because like I worked with some of those guys, but I don't think I'm even credited on it or anything. So yeah, it was. I went straight from Command & Conquer 3 to Red Alert 3, and then Red Alert 3 Uprising, the single player expansion pack is the last game that I shipped with Electronic Arts, but I worked on a couple of projects that were never announced and canceled after that before I quit, along with the co-founders of Supergiant Games, I might add. That's where I met the guys I'm working with now.
Yeah, and I believe you then moved on to 2K Games, and you worked as a publishing producer for Spec Ops: The Line. What exactly is a publishing producer?
So that's someone who works on the publishing side, is the liaison between the publisher and the developer, and is basically responsible for keeping the schedule on track, making sure it's on time and on budget, that sort of thing. So it's a more administrative position than what I was doing at EA, and certainly more than what I'm doing now. So it kind of distanced me from some of the creative aspects of game development, which I realized over time I really, really missed, and felt were kind of my true calling, as it were. So yeah, when I had the chance to kind of rejoin my former colleagues from EALA at Supergiant Games, it was like I felt like it was just one of the last chances I might ever get, if not the last chance to do something like this. They're a small startup company, so I had to kind of talk my family into, how would you like it if I stopped receiving steady income for a while? Does that sound good? So it was a bit of a, it took some convincing, because on the surface it didn't make obvious sense. But everyone, my close relatives and everything stood behind me and knew how much this mattered to me. And I joined up with them, and here we are with Bastion about to launch, and the game has received a ton of really great attention. So it's definitely been like a vindicating feeling, not to mention, the best. It's been easily the best professional experience of my career, like working with these guys on this game. It's just so good, working only with a small team of people who you know and trust, and it's all up to the people it's all up to you and the people around you to kind of make everything happen. I realized I really missed that kind of feeling because I started small when I started writing about games, doing little fanzines and stuff, and one day I was working for big companies. So I'm glad to be back doing the smaller thing.
Yeah, you did actually say, if I recall correctly, when you started this thing, that this is something I have to do, and this may be the only chance I'll ever get to do it. So congratulations for actually following that.
Thank you.
And coming through with that. So let's talk a little bit about the fruits of your labor. Bastion. So describe Bastion briefly to somebody that's never heard of it before.
Yeah, so it's an action role-playing game set in this kind of lush 2D hand-painted world that we created, and one of the unusual things about the game is that there's this mysterious narrator who kind of recounts the story of your adventure. He unfolds the story as you progress. So that's our way of delivering a story throughout the game. And our focus from a gameplay standpoint is on rewarding player skill. So whereas in a lot of action RPGs, you're kind of only as powerful as your equipment and your stats and stuff like that, our game is much more about playing with finesse, rewarding experimentation, lots of kind of near misses, and exciting moment-to-moment battles and stuff like that. Okay. So we think everything from the look of the game to the presentation to the feel of it all kind of sticks with people when they give it a shot.
Okay, well, there's a lot of things to cover there, so we'll start breaking it down just a little bit. And we'll start with the narrator, because that's been the thing that a lot of people have been focusing on, and it's also been one of your key points whenever you've spoken in previous interviews or previews. You've talked a lot about the narrator and actually bigged it up as a big core, not just part of the presentation, but actually part of a kind of a core storytelling mechanic within the game. So
yeah, absolutely.
Explain the exact purpose behind the narrator. Why did you decide to have this as part of your game? And I have to imagine that it was a fairly significant investment in terms of your budget, because that's a lot of voice acting that's gone into that.
Yeah, so it was a big investment in terms of time and focus and everything. And the reason we have it is because from the very beginning, and Bastion didn't. It's not one of those games that started with like a grand design document. It just started with kind of a germ of an idea. But right from the start, we knew we wanted to have the sort of game that was exciting to play from moment to moment, but also could leave a lasting impression through the kind of through the emotional response it created from its narrative. But we knew that we didn't want to interrupt the gameplay for the sake of the story. And at the beginning of the project, those seemed like contradictory goals. It's like, how do you have a story but never take the player out of the moment? And eventually, through the course of prototyping, that led to this narration technique. And part of the reason it was possible at all was because our audio director, Darren, was roommates with a mutual friend of Darren's and Amir's named Logan Cunningham, who's an actor in New York. So one day, Amir had Logan record a few lines and plugged them into the game, and whoa, the effect was pretty startling. And that was kind of the genesis of the technique. And we just sort of went crazy with it from there. Realized that we missed it wherever we didn't have it. The purpose of the technique is to essentially to deepen the player's interactions in the world, to add like context and meaning that the player could not discern on his own just from kind of running around in the world and performing basic interactions in it. So that's the way in which we use it to unfold the story, to surprise the player, to deepen the whole game world and all kinds of things like that.
Interesting. Now, considering the amount of voice acting that's going in on the narrator side of things and what you've just explained about how you want to tell the story in a way that doesn't actually interrupt the flow of the action, does that mean there's going to be less interaction with NPCs and it's going to be more of a lone wolf experience for the actual protagonist?
Without saying too much, it was the game was intended to be like this kind of personal journey where it's you and the narrator. The whole premise of the game, which you discover within moments of starting the game, is this surreal catastrophe called the Calamity appears to have just shattered the world into pieces and left no survivors except your character. So it's not the sort of game where you're kind of expecting to walk into a big RPG town and interact with a ton of NPCs or anything like that. It's kind of central to the story that there aren't a lot of people left around anymore.
Yeah, as regards to the setting, it looked from having a look at the gameplay footage, it looked a little bit post-apocalyptic, needless to say, because of the calamity. It looked a little bit steampunkish. What kind of influences did the team take in order to build this world?
Yeah, those are interesting observations. We went for kind of a high contrast type of setting. We wanted it to have these tones of kind of the Wild West, the American Wild West, but in addition to that, have some more exotic elements of like ancient Babylon, and it's very kind of purposeful that you can't quite place the time period of it. So if you sense a little kind of steampunk type stuff there, that's maybe where some of that comes in. But since the world of the game has been shattered, we really want to kind of evoke the grandeur of how the world used to be, because you look at the world and it still looks beautiful and so on, but you realize it's been totally destroyed. So we want players to have those kind of conflicted emotions where on the one hand they're traveling through the storybook setting, and on the other hand something really terrible has happened here. The influences range pretty wide, but all the credit goes to Gen Z, our art director, who joined the project at a time when we had an idea for the tone and the fiction, but the look was still undefined, and she was able to create a look that I think we all fell in love with very quickly.
Yeah, indeed. It is this very high-quality hand-drawn style that is starting to become a little bit more common amongst indie development teams who have decided to, instead of going for expensive, high polygon count, they're looking for something that is distinct and striking. And I'm, need to say, a big fan of it. I've had a look at the footage, and it does look absolutely fantastic. So congratulations to you guys for coming up with that unique look. Now, let's go into a couple of elements that could be potentially construed as negative, maybe, but it's good to have a little bit of discussion as regards to the mechanics. So we'll go back to the narrator.
Sure.
So I've heard the narrator in certain previews, and I've seen the narrator does speak an awful lot, and you've also explained that a lot of it is context sensitive and some of it is dynamic, so it's performance based in certain areas. If you do well, then the narrator will explain that you've done that. If you do badly, etc., etc. Now, my concern with that would be that because of how much of a story it is and how you're kind of being led along by this narrator, that it would really affect the replayability of the title. And do you expect players to play Bastion more than once, or is this just the kind of experience that you should go through once, experience the story, and then you can put it aside and say, well, you know what, I had a good time with this and that was fulfilling?
Yeah, so as a matter of fact, we fully expect many people to play through the game at least twice. And to support that, we have a whole New Game Plus mode where you could start over, carry over certain things, unlock new content, and even aspects of the narration change around a little bit as well.
Right.
I think it's the sort of story that lends itself to multiple playthroughs, not to mention the fact that a lot of the narration will naturally change based on some of the choices that the player makes throughout the game. So I hear the sort of theoretical concern that you mentioned, but I think when people play the game, they don't find what you said to be the case because the narrator, provides so much context, and hopefully if we've done our jobs properly in terms of the storytelling, then it's a compelling story that you would want to sort of re-experience, especially given that aspects of it can change for the same reasons that you would want to replay the game to begin with, that it's just a compelling aspect of the experience.
Fantastic. I have a feeling that your experience working in games journalism is really helping you in these interviews, I've got to say.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe, I suppose.
Yeah, so basically you're cheating. Let's just make it absolutely honest.
No, it's like, I think the thing I would, it's an interesting comment. The thing I'd say to that is like, I don't know. I feel like you can't argue with someone's experience with a game. It's like, I'm not gonna sort of overly defend any aspect of this game, but I could certainly explain how we rationalized
exactly
any aspect of it, because that we did put a lot of thought and focus into every aspect of the game. I feel so I stand ready to explain our our choices.
Excellent. Well, let's see if you can explain this one then. Since you're talking about you put a lot of thought into various aspects of the game, and of course, one of the most important aspects in any action RPG would be the item progression. Diablo was all about getting more powerful items, and it's the reason perhaps the game still exists. People still trade items with Diablo 2, even though the game has been out for pretty much a decade. So, you guys have decided to turn away a little from the linear progression of a lot of ARPGs and turn towards the idea that weapons perform in different ways and they suit particular play styles and they give you more variety as the game goes along. So, can you explain that in greater detail and also why the team decided to go down that route?
Yeah. So what you said is very much correct. That we wanted to, as mentioned earlier, we wanted to reward player skill and kind of keep surprising players with the feel of the gameplay variety. That each time they find a new weapon, it's going to behave differently from all the other stuff that they've played with thus far. To create a lot of cool choices there, and then in addition to that, each weapon is kind of fully upgradable with some branching upgrade choices. So there's a lot of depth with each individual weapon, and the reason for that. So we wanted to focus on making the weapons feel really good because that is the essential interaction in an action RPG.
Yes,
that is like the thing. Yeah, it's the thing that you spend the vast majority of your time doing. So we're like,
it's gotta feel good. Yep.
Exactly. That was one of the single most important things to us. And the reason we didn't go down, like we love Diablo, both 1 and 2. And the reason we didn't go down that kind of loot drop road is like, frankly, because it's like two reasons. One is that it's already been done so well in Diablo, and two is that we were in no way convinced that we could like do it any better because they're like a huge team. Part of the appeal of Diablo, as you said yourself, is that there's so much stuff. It's like we weren't under the impression that we could generate that much interesting content. So it wasn't even something that we considered. It was like something that we immediately thought, we're just not going to try to do that. So instead, this idea of like a much more action-oriented combat style where each weapon feels unique came into play. And I think some of that might even be influenced by our kind of real-time strategy roots, where like if you like designing a proper real-time strategy game these days, like all units on a given faction should be viable throughout the duration of a battle, stuff like that. So I think that was kind of some of our mentality with the weapons as well, that like we wanted the player to feel very attached to his weapons, almost like, especially because of what I said, that it's kind of this solitary journey. It's like your weapons are practically your friends in this game, and the narrator will kind of speak to that at some points.
Okay. Now, players more often than not are looking perhaps for a bit of a challenge, and it looks like you may have implemented something within this particular game which would give them just that and reward them for that. It's called the Shrine System. Would you like to explain that a little?
Yeah, sure. The Shrine System is our way of handling game difficulty, and hopefully players will find it to be kind of an interesting and fun way of going about that. Where it came from is like a desire to do something better than the conventional pick your difficulty type of system that you find in most games, where like our frustration with that is that games ask you to make a blind choice about it. They say, do you want like normal or hard and so on, but you haven't even played the game yet, so you don't know.
You have absolutely no benchmark to compare it to.
Exactly. At best, they'll kind of spell out what the distinction is, but you still haven't played the game and don't know what's right for you. So our solution is to introduce our difficulty system, during the course of play, after which after you've already had a chance to try out the game and get a feel for it. And the way it works is that it's all tied back to the game world and stuff, and you can invoke the different gods of the game world through their idols, and each idol, in fact, causes you, it doesn't bring you good fortune. Instead, it makes your enemies more powerful in different discrete ways. So like some of the simplest
gods suck. Good God, who would want to worship them?
Yeah, well, it's all tied back to the story a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it might be.
It's not quite as simple as that, because they do give you when you invoke the gods, you do get more rewards, so you gain more experience. and you also gain more of the currency that you need. So it's kind of a mix that you get, and that that is central to the idea of these gods, that they you might want to kind of use caution around them. And you can mix and match the effects in any combination. So you could go from making the game, just kind of a little bit harder to making it a whole lot harder, anywhere in between. And we felt this kind of self-managed difficulty system that was tied back to the game world could be a fun change of pace for people.
Indeed. So you mentioned currency there, which I have to assume is involved in some respect to the construction aspect of this game. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
In fact, the currency is more. It has more to do with the upgrade system, but there is a construction system as well, which is central to the story. That you find this location called the Bastion early on, and it appears to be the key to kind of writing all of the problems that have happened in this world. So you're going out there to find the materials needed to restore the Bastion to its full power, and in so doing, you're able to construct these different structures, like the distillery and the shrine and others. And each structure essentially gives access to one of the game's different systems, whether it's the character upgrade system or this difficulty system and so forth. So you're constantly opening up kind of new dimensions in how you can play the game as you return with these materials to town.
Interesting. Right, so this game is coming out on Xbox Live Arcade. It's actually going to be part of the Summer of Arcade, which is always a fantastic thing. Last year's Summer of Arcade was amazing. And I also heard that there might be a possibility for a PC version. Is that the case?
That is indeed correct. We've confirmed that the game is coming to PC at some point later this year. We don't have an exact date for it yet. It's because we're still working on it.
Fair enough. So, as an indie, why would you decide to develop with the Xbox 360 in mind, as opposed to, say, the PC, which at the moment, especially with Steam and, of course, Gamersgate providing a lot of promotion for, say, small indie projects, why would you go for the 360 as opposed to the PC? What was your rationale behind that?
Yeah, it's so those decisions, I think, especially for smaller developers that simply don't have the resources to be get on every platform at the same time. They're profoundly important, right? Because they have everything to do. In addition to the quality of the game, it's like the platform decision is going to determine how many people will actually be able to play your game. Yeah. In our case, we were really inspired by some of the games that were on Xbox Live Arcade specifically at the time we formed the studio, which was back in 2009, in the fall of 2009. Mm-hmm. So we looked back at this stuff at Braid and Castle Crashers, and there was stuff on PC as well, actually, like Plants vs. Zombies, and that stuff was just like I said, really inspirational, because here were these small teams making these really high quality games that had they gave a feel that real human beings made these games, right? Okay. They had a personal touch to them. Yeah. And we really wanted to make a console game. We had been making PC-centric games on the with the Command and Conquer series and so on. So the Xbox 360 was kind of a natural choice there. It was easier for us to get started working on it for technical reasons. And I'm using the plural tense, but really it's Gavin Simon who architected our engine and our tools and stuff like that. It made the most sense at the time from a technical perspective, and it also meant that we could get the game on PC pretty easily as well.
Yeah, I've heard that porting from 360 to PC is not that difficult relative to, say, another platform. Yeah,
that's correct. So that's kind of the nature of the choice. And folks ask us a lot if we're coming to PSN or any number of different platforms. And the reason, we've only announced the 2 versions of the game because we made the decision at some point, and we really, really stand by it, especially looking back, that we would only focus on making one version of the game at a time in the interest of quality, because there are big trade-offs that come with trying to kind of get the game on multiple platforms at the same time. There are benefits to that as well, but to us, the quality of the game was the most important thing. So we sort of bit down and said, okay, we're just going to do the 360 version first and then the PC version after that, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Okay, fantastic. Right, so I've heard pretty much all I need to know about the game as opposed to how much it's going to cost. It is coming out on the 20th of July 2011. How many Microsoft points are we expected to shell out for this one?
It's 1,200 points.
Okay, there you go. Brilliant. And one last question on a personal note before we wrap this one up. And I just want to know what exactly inspired your decision to leave games journalism and actually get into games developing. It's not a hugely common thing to see that transition.
There some folks have done it, but it's not super common. For me personally, making games is something I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. And in fact, the working in the gaming media for as long as I did, I really fell in love with that side of thing. With that aspect of my work, especially being a game critic and writing about games and everything. But kind of woke up one day and realized I'd been doing it for 10 or 12 years. And if I didn't get into game development at some point soon, I started feeling like I might kind of miss the boat entirely and never have a shot at it. Yeah. So I always, it may sound kind of corny or something, but it really is a childhood dream of mine to get into game development and do the kind of work that I was able to do on Bastion in particular, which is like writing the stories, creating the worlds and stuff like that. I left GameSpot nearly 5 years ago, and as we talked about, I've since been through kind of multiple jobs, and only now that I'm working with this small team of close friends of mine am I finally able to do the work that I feel plays to my strengths the most. But of course, I'm reserving judgment on that. I'll wait and see what people actually have to say about the game. But it's been incredibly fulfilling for me. I do think I went into game development with eyes wide open, knowing that it wasn't going to be a walk in the park and that it would have its ups and downs and stuff, and it absolutely has. It's been a real roller coaster ride for me over the last 5 years. But I'm really glad I did it, and I hope that when people play Bastion, they'll see that they'll feel that it was worth it or something like that.
Fantastic. Right, well, guys, check out Bastion coming out on the 20th of July on Xbox Live Arcade. And of course, if you don't happen to own an Xbox, then a PC version is forthcoming. And no doubt we will prod you in its direction once it gets released. And Greg, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem whatsoever. Best of luck with your title, and hopefully everything goes very well indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, my name has been TotalBiscuit. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.